chair of them when Todd was running for chairman of the Michigan Republican Party, and that's how our relationship started, and progressed from there and helped a little bit through Todd on her race for state representative.
Okay, that came up. How long did you work for him?
I think about 2 years before the House Representative.
There came a point in time that you quit.
Yeah, but I quit working as employment of the House of Representatives in April of 2015.
You were working for Mr. Corser prior to that time?
Yeah, yep.
And Ms. Gamrat?
No, we were never employed on this campus.
And can you just, I don't want you to get into great detail, but you quit for a reason. What was the reason?
I quit for a multitude of reasons. One, that the relationship, the nature of the relationship inside the office, the interactions, the change in demeanor and attitude of Mr. Corser was completely different to what I had known previous to the previous 20 years.
All right, sir, can you tell me whether or not you know a person by the name of Benjamin Graham?
Yes, I did.
And how did you know Benjamin Graham?
I met Ben in 2008 on Todd's very first endeavor into politics, a little bit more in 2010, and then he was an intern for me on the Pete Hoekstra for U.S. Senate race. And then from there we ended up working on Todd's race for state party chair and ended up being hired for the House.
Okay, was Mr. Graham hired by Mr. Corser?
Yes, he was.
Do you know what his position or his title or his role there was?
Which are you referring to?
All right.
Are you referring pre-House of Representatives or post?
Post.
He was the Director of Constituent Services.
All right. And do you know Keith Allard?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell the court how you know Mr. Allard?
I met Mr. Allard off and on throughout our political endeavors. I knew who he was. Came to know him when he was hired to be the Chief of Staff for the Corser Gamrat office.
Hang on a minute. What was the person's first name?
Keith.
And spell his last name?
Allard.
And his position was what?
Chief of Staff.
You said he was Chief of Staff for the Gamrat Corser office?
Correct.
They had some kind of combined office setup?
Combined operations, yes.
Can you explain that for the court? Look at it.
It entailed where Todd was concerned, let's back up a little bit. So they wanted, Mr. Corser wanted someone with experience. Mr. Graham and myself had never worked as legislative staffers. We've been political operatives. So they were looking for someone with experience to kind of oversee the operations of both, so Keith or that person would be primarily operating out of Cindy's office. I investigated, worked with a member of the House staff, a friend of mine, worked with him for a day, who had done some sort of combined office before. I came back, reported in a meeting that I didn't think it was probably the best way to go, although it would, save some money or have an allotment that we could get paid more by combining them.
Was it common to have joint offices like that?
No. Nope. And in every instance that I had learned, it didn't work, whether it worked for 3 months or 6 months or it worked for a short period of time, then eventually it just didn't for either logistic purposes or we're politicians and everyone wants their own attention too. That's one of the other reasons.
All right. There come a point in time that you were contacted. Wait, are you familiar with the false email?
I'm familiar with it, yes.
Okay, there come a point in time that that Ben Graham contacted you or got a hold of you with regard to him going to Mr. Corser's office?
Yes, that would be, I learned of the email the night that Ben made his recording.
Okay. Did you come in contact with Ben that day or that night?
Yeah, Ben called me earlier in the evening. I can't recall exactly what time, late, and that he had gotten a call from Todd. And he's been very, well, you're saying.
What's Ben Graham? We haven't gotten there yet. At this point, he said he got a call from him, okay?
Correct. I received a call from Mr. Graham and saying that...
Well, don't tell us what was there.
Let me follow up with that. After
Sure.
You got a call from Mr. Graham.
Yes.
Could you tell whether or not he was upset or concerned, without getting any details of the content of this discussion? How could you tell that?
He didn't see himself. He seemed a little visibly shaken, or not visibly, audibly shaken. He was very concerned about the language that Todd was using.
Without foundation as to what he was concerned about, calls for hearsay.
Okay, let me rephrase that question, Judge.
Okay, thank you.
All right, were you aware what he was concerned about?
Yes,
Or did you know he was going to Mr. Corser's office?
yes.
Okay, during that period of time with Mr. Corser, you had contact with him at this point, or had you already quit at this point in time?
I had no contact with Mr. Corser.
All right. Did Mr. Graham come over to your home?
Yes,
Okay, at the time Mr. Graham was at your home, did he perchance have a tape recording with him
I want to get a recording on his phone.
on his phone? Okay, do we know whether or not that tape recording was played? Did you hear it, what was on the tape?
Yes, I did.
At the time you were with Mr. Graham at that point, was he visibly shaking? Or had he calmed down some?
He wasn't visibly shaking at that
All
point.
right. About what time was it that he came over?
It was after midnight.
Okay, had he called you prior to him going over to Mr. Corser's office or afterwards?
Both.
Well, about what time was it that he called you that he was going over to Mr. Corser's office?
Maybe 7 p.m., I can't recall exactly.
And then he came to your house. Did you live near, and I want you to give me the address, but did you live near?
Yeah, I live here, so it's relatively close to the Mr. Corser's office.
So when we talk about his office, you're not talking about his office at the state capitol or in the capitol office building?
I'm referring to his legal office. Look here.
He still had a legal practice, even though he's a representative of the House, did he still continue with a legal practice?
That's correct.
His office located in Lapeer.
Correct.
Sir, can you tell the court, what is a blue back?
A blue back is the back of a piece of legislation that is signed and delivered to the clerk. It has, it's accompanied by 10 other multiple copies of legislation. It does not have a clean piece of paper on the back.
All right, and what is its purpose?
Its purpose is to have co-sponsors on the bill or the sponsor of the bill.
Any proposed bill?
Yeah, any proposal that that was going to be submitted to the office of clerk.
Okay, there's a couple bills that I'm concerned about, House Bill 4318, 4317.
I'm sorry, the first one's 4318.
318, yes,
4317.
that's correct.
A little bit marked.
Yes.
Okay, 4318 is exhibit 1.
I think that that they're both attached as Exhibit 1, proposed Exhibit 1. That's not it.
It's your exhibit law.
That's mine.
Exhibit 1, too.
Okay.
Objection Foundation.
Okay. We'll get to that.
Yeah, I'm going to look at it.
I've seen prosecutors, one,
One is what?
Actually, we have them marked as both 4318 and 7 as Exhibit, proposed Exhibit 1.
okay, so 4318 and 4317 are one. I've seen them, I would like to wonder if they're appropriate.
Call where I'm at. I want to talk about these. Sir, when discussing, in particular, these blue backs, was there any discussion with regard to Mr. Corser and Ms. Gamrat regarding your signing those that blue back?
Yes,
I'm
sir.
going to object as to form and ask that that be separated out as to Corser and Gamrat.
I'm going to sustain it. Let's try and keep it separate.
Very well. Let's start with Mr. Corser. Did you have discussions with Mr. Corser regarding signing the blue backs?
Yes, I did.
And can you tell the court all about that?
And I object as to that hearsay coming in against Ms. Gamrat, statements by title.
This is only coming after Mr. Corson.
Thank you.
Right.
Objection hearsay?
Well, it can't be hearsay, Judge, it's a party opponent.
Overruled.
Thank you.
Mr. Corser had previously had let me know that if it was needed to be, that either he wasn't in the office or even before working in Lansing, that it was common practice in the attorneys that if the lawyer needed someone to sign for him, you could sign for them on behalf of their commission. And so there were other instances where there was previous to working in Lansing where that was done, and we had a conversation on these two particular bills, he really wanted the road tax bills in as fast as possible, and that we had conversations about when they got in, that chase that cart down if you have to, get those bills in as fast as you can.
Were you directed to sign them?
Continue.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
So when it came to conversations throughout the weekend and previous, when the bills were going to be ready, I believe I was offered it either through text or conversation, if you can bring the bills to you, you can sign them on that Tuesday when you get into the office. I was like, no, I want them in as fast as possible, just got to get it done.
So Mr. Corser suggested, or was it you that suggested that the bills be brought to him?
It was me.
And brought to him where?
In Lapeer at his office on my way home.
Mr. Corser said what?
Mr. Corser on Monday, he, in a phone conversation, I believe it was a phone conversation, I can't recall if it was phone or text, so we just get them in, just get them submitted. We wanted them in.
Did he at any time tell you, for you to sign his name to it?
That was it previously discussed that whether it was we needed something in the office or whatever it was that he wasn't able to physically do, to go ahead and sign for him in his stead.
Did he ever tell you or direct you to go to the House Business Office?
Well, this thing,
Oh, yes, yes.
did he tell you specifically this Monday, in this phone or text, to sign his name to the blue back for 4318 and 4317? How's that?
His exact words, there was no exact words, and yes, signed, his exact words were just get it done.
Just get it done. Okay.
Why did you want to get it done so fast?
I believe, if I recall, we got word that Representative Glenn was going to submit them, and Todd
What's, you know Representative Glenn's first name?
Gary Glenn.
Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No, you're fine. And that Todd really wanted to hit the messaging moment on this one about numerous issues, and I think we did. He ended up doing an email once the bills were submitted, but he really wanted to capture that moment. It was the utmost importance to get them in before anybody else.
Why? Do you indicate why?
To capture the moment, to capture the ability to be able to speak about the bills, speak about Lansing, overspending, the typical issues that we talked about.
I guess you have to explain to me a little bit. Is there,
Sure.
I'm not real familiar with the
Okay.
legislative process. Is there an importance if a bill is introduced first or second? How does that work?
Not necessarily, because the chair can pick up any bill, but if you're submitting it first, that's the person who's going to be getting the most, shall I say, attention to the bill. That I submitted it, anybody else after that would kind of lose the momentum.
Okay, sir. Also, with regard to the, may I approach the witness for a moment, Judge?
Sure.
I'm going to show you what's marked as people's proposed one in that regard to the signatures on Bill 4317, 4318. Can you take a look at those?
Sure.
Objection, Your Honor, the exhibits aren't evidence yet. I don't think we'll be an issue.
Well, you're looking at it, you gotta lay a foundation. Overruled.
Okay, now with regard to those signatures, whose signatures are those? I mean, as far as the names and
Todd
stuff.
A. Corser, Cindy Gamrat on 4318. Todd A. Corser and Cindy Gamrat on 4317.
Can you tell me whether or not those are yours, that you put those signatures on it?
It looks like yeah.
Are those is that your handwriting?
They could pass as my handwriting, yes.
There come a time you talk to...
Well, wait a minute. It passes your handwriting?
No,
Let me see.
Yeah, sure.
Did you sign these?
yeah,
So this is your attempt at their signature?
correct.
Okay.
Now,
Very good.
Do you have a chance, with regard to the signatures of Cindy Gamrat,
Can you repeat the question?
You offering those now to the citizen?
I have a couple additional questions, Judge, and I will. With regard to Cindy Gamrat, you signed her name on these as well.
Correct.
How did that come about?
It came about when any piece of legislation was going to be done by Mr. Corser or Representative Corser or Representative Gamrat, that Todd's bill was it was his bill, then Cindy would be a co-sponsor, and if it was Cindy's bill, Cindy would be a co-sponsor. So anything that they were done would be done vice versa. So if Todd was on the top line, Cindy would be an extra, if Cindy was on the top, Todd would be an extra.
I object and move to strike. That has no foundation. He laid no foundation.
I'm gonna take the answer, Mr. Nicholson. That doesn't do much for me in terms of the misconduct charge. Maybe we'll get to it, I mean, as it relates to Ms. Gamrat. So let's see where we go. I'll take the answer.
Were there discussions with Ms. Gamrat with regard to signing the bluebacks?
There were conversations about the two bills in question, and that we need to get those bills in a meeting the previous Thursday. Whether it was, can't recall whether Cindy herself said, go ahead and sign them. It was Todd asked Cindy, we need to get these in, do you really care? And she said, whatever, go ahead, whatever you think.
May I approach the witness again, Judge?
I object. If you can't attribute a statement.
Mr. Nicholson, you'll have a chance to cross-examine. If he said he can, I don't know why you're objecting. If you don't want me to take the answer that he can't say if Ms. Gamrat told him. If you don't want me to take the answer, I'll strike it. What do you want me to do? Take the answer?
Well, you ruled on the objection.
I'm going to take the answer subject to cross-examination.
At this time, I move to the admission of Peoples 1.
Like the one you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Klein, good morning.
Morning.
Was it your testimony? May I approach the witness?
This is voir dire as to the exhibit only.
Yes. And you what's been marked as prosecutor's proposed exhibit 1 is a 2-page exhibit. Your testimony is you did not work for Ms. Gamrat?
So we both worked. We were employed by the House of Representatives. I worked in Representative Bush's office. We did operations for both Representative Gamrat and Representative Corser.
And it's your testimony from your independent recollection. That's to the first page, which I believe is 43-1A. That second signature that appears there is your handwriting, sir?
Yes, that's correct.
Same question as to the next page of the exhibit.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
That's your handwriting?
That would be correct.
Earlier you said that could pass as your handwriting.
Well, it could pass as that signature. I mean, I've only, nobody signed Cindy's
Mr.
signature.
Nichols, he said that's it, that he signed it.
Yes. I'm admitting to it, yes, I signed it.
How many times have you looked at that proposed exhibit since you submitted those bills?
Today. And when I met with the Attorney General's office yesterday and the day before.
Okay. And when did you submit those two proposed bills?
Whatever day that they were submitted to the clerk's office, I couldn't tell you exactly which day. I could look that up,
Okay. March?
Possible, sure. Anywhere, March.
No further objection. Voir dire.
Mr. DePerno.
I have no questions.
All right. The court will receive Exhibit 1, which is a 2-page exhibit. We should be clear. That is a copy, Mr. Townsend, of the blue back only. The legislation is not attached to it. That's just the blue back with the signatures, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Exhibit 1 is received.
I would indicate to the court, Your Honor, that one of our witnesses will be bringing the originals from the house.
That's fine. Copies fine. It's received.
So after you quit, did you have an opportunity to observe by live stream watching Mr. Corser testify?
Yes.
Recall when that was?
Whatever date that was, in August, I believe.
There came out. Can you tell the court your reaction? You remember watching the testimony when the information came out that he had directed his staff to the House Business Office and to find out whether or not he could have somebody sign it?
Yes, I do recall that.
Okay. Can you tell the court your reaction when you observed?
Every day you're getting things done. We're right there with you. Our 60,000 American workers are exploring new ways to keep you moving forward every day. We are Coke.
Did you ever go to the House business office to find out whether or not you could sign the
No.
signatures? Were you ever directed to go to the House
No.
business office by either Defendant Corser or Defendant Gamrat?
No.
Anything of that nature?
No.
And I believe you had testified when you saw that, that's when you got upset, or?
Correct.
Judge, I don't have any further questions of this witness at this time.
Mr. Dupont.
I think we agreed I was going to go first, but if the court wants Mr. DeCriminal first, that's fine.
Yeah, we worked it out.
Yeah.
Will I hand the witness the proposed exhibit?
May I see that first?
And you must have been marked as proposed exhibit A for defendant Gamrat. Mr. Klein, do you remember that you were deposed by these two lawyers from the Attorney General's office?
Yes, I was.
Do you know what the term immunity means?
Yeah, I guess I'm sure.
You were granted immunity by the Attorney General's office?
Yes, I was.
Do you have an understanding of what that meant?
Well, that I wouldn't, this is called use immunity, so anything that was said in the course of the deposition could not be held against me in that or in the future.
In other words, for any criminal conduct that you may admit to,
Sure.
you wouldn't be prosecuted for any criminal conduct you admitted to so long as you told the truth?
Correct.
Okay. And this was on February 12th, 2016, sir?
Yeah, according to the deposition on the topic of February. Right.
Much closer in time to these events that you testified to here this morning than we sit here at May 25th, 2016. Would you also agree with that?
Obviously, yes.
You had a lawyer there.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Now, during this deposition, it was really important then to be truthful, right?
Correct.
You were under oath.
Correct.
Okay. You adopt that testimony that you gave under oath as truthful?
Yes,
Okay. And you're trying to be truthful here today.
of course.
Your memory may not be as good as it was on that day, but you're trying to do your best.
I will do my absolute best.
Okay. This shared office that you testified to at the beginning of your testimony, that was your idea, wasn't it?
Originally, yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was his idea?
The shared office. You testified that you never worked for Ms. Gamrat.
Testified that never was employed.
Hang on, are you saying it was the witness's idea?
Yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sure. You testified that you were not employed by Ms. Gamrat?
I was not employed by Ms. Gamrat. I was employed by the House representatives working in Mr. Corsor's office, but we did joint operations with both representatives.
Okay. So which one was it?
Both.
Oh, I'm having a difficult
Oh,
time
that's
hearing.
Yeah, actually, let me have those exhibits. Thank you.
Yep.
What I want to make sure I'm clear on, and the record is clear on, is whether or not at the time that you submitted these two bills, you had a principal-agent relationship with Ms. Gamrat. You understand what I'm asking?
Explain principal agent.
Sure. Did you have the legal authority to sign her name?
I guess not.
Now, Mr. Corser had a conversation with you about the bluebacks, as you testified
Right.
to here today. Okay. And what he actually told you was to sign his name, correct?
Correct.
All right. And that's consistent with your testimony on February 12th, which was under oath.
Correct.
You were following his orders.
Correct.
He told you it was okay.
Correct.
He was a lawyer.
Yes.
He currently is a lawyer.
I believe so, yes.
And you relied on that.
Yes.
He was your boss.
Yes.
Just going to check in with my client and my co-counsel real quick here. A couple of quick points for clarification. This joint office was not a joint physical office, right?
It was not a joint physical offices. Probably Representative Corser, Representative's office are assigned to different spots in the House Business Office, but we primarily did most of our work out of Representative Gamrat's office.
After all of this came out, did you become aware that signing for another, in other words, staff signing for their legislator, was a common practice?
It is a common practice within the House is for staff members to sign on behalf of their legislative bosses for other things, numerous things. Did I know that it was common practice to sign the back of a blue back? No.
Okay, that's what I was trying to parse out with you.
Sure.
Common practice, would that include, if you know or not, signing a blue back?
It was not common practice to sign out, no.
You ever talked to any of the staff people about that?
Nope, did not.
So you wouldn't know who was or wasn't.
We knew that conversations about other staff in the House of what they had signed, and it never was brought up from them that they signed feedbacks. So if, say, they needed stationery or different things from the House Business Office and the representative wasn't there, it's kind of common practice that legislative staff would sign on behalf or sign a signature for their bosses. The subject of bluebacks never came up from any of the staffers in the House.
I heard the term signature stamp.
Yes.
Okay. That's a stamp with the person's name on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you guys have one in Representative Corser's
I
office?
don't recall if we did.
How about electronic signature?
I believe we did have a digital signature on file. I think Ben had that.
Okay, there was a digital signature
I
on
think
file.
there was. Maybe it was. I might be mistaking from the campaign, because I know we had one for the campaign, but I can't recall if we also had one when we transferred over, had one in the House on file.
When you say they, who's they?
Just me and Ben. Did we have? I know we had one on file when he was running for office for things that we've used. If we needed a signature on a mailer or a letter, I know we had one for the political campaign. I don't recall if we had one when we were working in the House of Representatives.
And at the time that you submitted proposed exhibit, admitted exhibit 1, those two bills, you just assumed you had authority to do that.
Yes, that's right.
Are you familiar with House Rule 41?
No, I'm not.
You're not?
Nope.
Did you ever read it?
Nope.
Now, last thing, you testified about this conversation in the office among a group of you about a week before those bills were submitted.
Sure.
As you sit here today, you're doing the best you can to remember everything that was said,
Sure.
and you've covered it as best you can.
As far as I know, yes.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Mr. DePerno.
Who was in that meeting a week before the bills were submitted?
I believe it was Allard. I think Ben was there. I'm assuming, I can't recall if he was or wasn't there. And Todd and Cindy and myself.
And it's your testimony that during this meeting, the issue of signing the bluebacks was discussed?
The issue of the bluebacks, or not the bluebacks, the issue of the bills themselves were brought up, that he wanted those bills submitted. They were of the utmost importance. They were priority number one, to work with Legislative Services Bureau to get those bills to the submission as soon as possible. And we had discussed a timeline. It was brought up by LSB that they may be there Friday, they may be there Monday, but whenever they were to come in, that they needed to be submitted.
Did anyone ask you at that meeting to sign a blueback?
The word sign a blueback was not used. It was the word, we need to get that submitted whenever they get in.
Was it your decision to combine the two offices?
It was my idea to start. I investigated it with a friend who worked for the House, who worked for Representative LaFontaine at the time, it was Andrea LaFontaine. And upon his being there for a day and learning about it, and reporting back to Todd and Cindy, who weren't representatives yet, in a meeting, that eventually most of the time it didn't work for whatever reason, whether there's time factors at play or logistics at play, that it didn't work. Todd and Cindy really liked the idea at that time, and they pursued going forward with it at that time.
And you had testified earlier that you would get paid more if the offices were
That was
combined?
part of the rationale, is that if we were to have combined offices, we could work on combining, not physically combining the allotment, but having some portion of salary paid by one and paid by another, so that we could have a higher salary and dividing it amongst the three as opposed to dividing amongst the four. It was also suggested that by me, and agreed by Representative Corser and Gamrat, that since they were going to be so closely ideologically aligned, that it kind of made sense to combine activities or actions instead of doing double the work. And that would also give Mr. Corser, alleviate his concern of not having someone of experience, legislative experience, that would kind of alleviate that concern.
You testified earlier about the night of May 19, 2015. Is that the night of the email?
Yeah, I believe it is.
You knew before Ben went to visit with Mr. Corser that Ben was going there?
Yes, it is.
Did you have a discussion with Mr. Graham before he went to that
Yes,
meeting?
it did.
Did you instruct him to record that?
No, I did not.
Let me finish the question.
Sorry, apologize.
Did you instruct him to record that conversation?
No, I did not.
Did you know he was going to record it?
No, I did not.
You testified then that he came to your house after midnight.
That is correct.
Did he play you that recording at that time?
Yes, he did.
You stated that that you watched the testimony of Mr. Corser from your home from September 9. Is that correct?
I don't recall the exact date that was, but if you're referring to the testimony of the House committee, then that would be correct.
You stated that there was a lie told.
Yes.
What was the lie?
Well, Mr. Corser, I believe under testimony, said that he had talked with Keith Ballard about checking with the House Business Office to see if signing the bluebacks was allowed. As far as to my recollection, that conversation about bluebacks, about signatures, was all done between me and Todd, about getting those two particular bills.
How would you know? You just testified that you thought it was a lie based on the conversation that Mr. Corser had with Mr. Allard.
I had a conversation with Mr. Corser and myself, and the only two people that were aware that those bluebacks were going to be submitted by Mr. Allard or Mr. Graham were not aware that the bluebacks were going to be signed by me.
You don't know that though, do you?
I can only tell you what I know from a conversation between Mr. Corser and myself.
Well, here, do you know for a fact whether or not Mr. Corser had a conversation with Mr. Alward about checking with House Business Office?
Do I say that I know that for a fact? No, I can tell you about the conversations I've had with Mr. Allard and
No,
Mr.
you're
Graham.
going to tell me about your personal
Okay.
knowledge. Do you have any personal knowledge as to whether or not that conversation took place?
Possible.
Excuse me?
Not possible for me to know 100% whether that conversation took place.
Okay. I'm going to take that to mean the witness has no personal knowledge. That any knowledge he may have, it sounds like it is hearsay, it's secondary, or through some other conversation. Go ahead, anything else?
Yeah. So you can't sit here based on your own personal knowledge and tell us that anything that Mr. Corser said at that time was a lie.
No, that wouldn't be true. I can tell you based on the knowledge, our conversation and my personal recollection.
I'm asking you directly, what was a lie?
What was a lie is that he had knowledge that it was okay by the House Business Office to have those bluebacks signed.
How is that a lie?
Because there was no, it's a lie when you have a conversation to get a blueback signed, he didn't know.
How do you know he didn't know?
Because he didn't know, he told me he didn't know. He didn't know.
He who?
Mr. Representative Corser. Representative Corser had a history of not knowing what the process was for an amendment, let alone not even knowing how the bill would be submitted to the clerk's office.
Were you present when Mr. Corser and Mr. Allard had a conversation where Mr. Corser asked Mr. Allard to go to the home business office and ask about bluebacks?
You mean House Business Office?
The house visit.
There was never a conversation in my presence that Mr. Corser or Mr. Allard had that conversation. It's never in my presence.
When was the first time you met with Brock Swartz?
I don't believe I ever met with Brock Swartz.
Did you ever meet with Hassan Biduni?
Outside of legislative duties, no. The only time I met with Hassan was doing work, I believe he was on the Criminal Justice Committee at the time.
Why were you meeting with Mr. Biduni?
To get amendments for some bills. He was the chief counsel of that committee. That was common practice to check to make sure the language was correct and to work with Legislative Services Bureau to get those amendments.
Is it illegal to sign somebody's name to a blueback?
Objection, Your Honor. I've said it's ground for a legal conclusion for the court to decide.
Sounds that way, Mr. Burnham. Your response?
What? No. He was granted immunity, so...
So that doesn't make that you can't give a legal opinion as to whether or not it's illegal, number one. Number two, my understanding is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, this issue of blueback relates to House Rule 41. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Which the witness said he hadn't read and has no knowledge of. Objection is sustained.
Testified that there was a telephone conversation you had with Mr. Corser before the blueback was submitted?
Yeah, the telephone. I can't remember if it was telephone or text.
You don't know if it was a telephone?
The telephone or text, but there was communication. Yes.
What did that communication state?
And the communications were that either Friday and or that Monday about when was that blueback going to be in? Is it in yet? I believe they're receiving an email communication about chase that cart down if you have to. And then when the bills came in, then it was to get them submitted. It was to get them submitted right then. And I think there's an email communication about them making jokes about me running across the Capitol lawn to get those submitted before anyone else could.
Did you participate in those email jokes?
Well, their jokes were against me, so I read them. Yeah.
I have no further questions.
I have a question. Well, can you redirect?
I had a couple, but I can wait for the court.
Well, you go right ahead. We're going to take a break.
All right. Mr. Klein, with regard to Mr. Corser, that you were testifying with regard to the communication about, you could go to that card or whatever to get that blue back signed. Are you aware that you signed those blue backs?
With who? I'm sorry.
Corser. It was Lieutenant Corser knowledgeable that you signed those?
Yes.
Okay. Is Mr. Gamrat knowledgeable that you had signed your name to those blue backs?
I can't recall, but I don't recall.
You said that you were in a meeting about a week before and talked
Yeah,
about this legislation?
Yep.
And Ms. Gamrat was there?
Yes, she was.
And Mr. Corser was there?
Correct.
Tell me what happened in that.
Same thing that was discussed, the importance of those bills. When it came to the subject of getting those bills, I was submitted as fast as possible. Todd would probably not be there Friday or Monday. Todd said, and I suggested, do you want them submitted Friday or Monday, or do you want them submitted on Tuesday? Do you want me to bring them to your house? Thought that let's get them in as fast as possible. And he said to Cindy, is that good for you? And she said, yeah, that's good for me.
Right. Now, did you make an attempt to get these blue backs over to Mr. Corser in order for him to sign the blue backs?
I might offer, but that's the only attempt.
Tell me about that.
It's just an offer of, I can bring, if we get them on Friday, I can bring them to your office, you can have them signed, we can get them submitted on Monday. But they didn't come in on Friday, obviously. They didn't come in until Monday.
What did he say that?
As far as, he said, we'll just get them submitted whenever they arrive.
And I seem to remember reading something when it's talking about having knowledge of the certain House procedures and something to the extent where, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Corser had indicated, I don't need to know.
That was previous, and then when we were trying to get amendments for the wiretapping bill, I don't remember the actual number of the bill. He wanted 4 amendments done on a state holiday, and I think that's where that statement comes from. I don't need to know the amendment process, that's your job. I think that's where that came from.
So that's your job?
I'm paraphrasing, I'd have to see the exact email to remember the exact verbiage.
Anything else? Nothing further.
What I understand, Ms. Gamrat never told you specifically to sign her name to what you're admitted as people's want.
Correct.
All right, thank you, sir. You may step down.
Thank you.
And this witness be excused.
Any objection?
Well, I served a separate subpoena on this witness through his lawyer, who never called me back.
That's all right, Mr. Nichols. Do you need him for anything else?
Can I reserve?
You're on call for Mr. Nichols. Mr. Colonel?
We reserve also.
Okay, you're free to leave. If they need you back, it'll be for them to figure it out.
Okay, thank you.
All right? All right, we're going to take a 10-minute recess. Actually, let's be back at 1:15.
Thank you, Judge.
Sure there. Oh, it's going. Well, it's going.
Do they have us going live at noon?